Hey, welcome to another episode of Talking Hyvä.
Welcome to the Hoover YouTube channel. If you've been here before, welcome back. It is an absolute pleasure to have you here. My name is Rebecca Brocton and I am Community Manager here at Hoover. Today we've got a really exciting discussion lined up all about content management with Adobe Experience Manager and Adobe Edge Delivery Services, seamlessly integrating with Hoover and Adobe Commerce. And this has been a kind of internal joint research project that's been going on in the background with Hoover and our partner Nets98 Valantic. I'm joined by a dream team of 3 wonderful experts who have been instrumental in this integration. They are Christian Münch, Vinai Kopp and Sean van Zuidam. I think it'd be good to start with a quick round of introductions so that I can actually stop talking. Christian, could you please introduce yourself to us, tell us a little bit about yourself and Nets98 Valantic too?
Yes, of course. Hi, I'm Christian. I'm working for Valantic. That's a European-based company, mostly European, and the company is doing all about digitalization. Yeah, hard word for German. And we have different divisions in the Valantic, and I'm working in the CX division, so customer experience. And in the CX division, there are competence centers, and I'm the tech lead of the competence center in Germany for Magento, open source, and Adobe Commerce and other Adobe tools. So it's Adobe related competence center and to some metrics maybe. So the CX division is there are more than 1,000 people working for the CX division, and in relation to Magento, Adobe Commerce, we have 350 experts.
Wow, really big team then. That's awesome. Vinay, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. I'm Vinai Kopp, CTO and Technical Director at Hyvä Theme. And yeah, this was a lot of fun building it, so I'm very happy to talk a little bit about it.
Nice. Thank you. And last but definitely not least, Sean.
Hi, I'm Sean. I'm Frontend Developer at Hyvä, and I mostly work at the UI, but I contributed my front-end skills at the EDS to implement a Hyvä-like experience inside of EDS.
Nice. That's great. Thank you all so much for joining me. I am actually so excited to get into this because I feel like I'm going to learn so much. I don't really know that much about EDS. Obviously, I've never really seen it. So yeah, I'm really excited to get into this with you. First things first, I think it'd be great to start with like a completely blank canvas and take it right down to layman's terms of what actually is Edge Delivery Services or EDS.
I can try to start. So for, Edge Delivery Service, it's a term which and it contains several tools and services provided by Adobe. So it's all about publishing content, editing content. The project was started as a new way to publish content for the Adobe Experience Manager, and in the meantime, they added support for Adobe Commerce. That's where we came in here. And tools means there are, for example, ways to edit content in documents. So it's called document-based authoring. So this means you can open a Word document or Excel sheet and then publish your content right from the document. That's
Different.
new especially for me. It was new to work in this way, but it works very well. So we will show that later on.
Yeah, that'd be really interesting to see because I've wondered how complex or not those actual documents look in order to structure a page. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see that.
Yeah, it's interesting new way to edit content. So it's complete different like we worked before. And then this content is converted and published to the Edge. So this means the content is delivered very fast next to the user. So that's why it's very fast.
Wow.
Yeah, edge means a server close to the visitor, right? To the browser.
Yeah,
On
right.
the edge.
this
Okay,
case,
that
yeah.
makes
Technical
sense.
term.
I like it. That definitely makes sense. It's right on the edge.
Yeah, you can pick it up and it's right there. Yeah.
I
Kind
love
of
it.
like a
So
CDN, but Adobe always makes it very clear that Edge Delivery Service, it's not an CDN, even though
but
it is
but
part of it.
this authoring is only one piece of the whole solution. There are also other solutions in the background, publishing the content, processing the content, caching the content, as well as CDNs are in place. So yeah, it's our browser toolbar, for example, is available, which can be used then to publish the content right from the browser if the document is opened. And yeah, that's basically Edge Delivery Services.
Nice, thank
There's
you.
one little tidbit I would like to add, which is the name Edge Delivery Services. When it was a little while ago, it was presented at Adobe Summit, and everybody used the term EDS there, the acronym EDS for Edge Delivery Services. And in emails it was used and everywhere pretty much. And now all of a sudden Adobe has decided, oh no, we don't want to call it EDS, we want to call it Edge Delivery Services. I'm not entirely sure why, because it's, I think there's some illness or something which is called EDS or uses the same acronym, even though Googling it, it seemed
Right.
like a very low, very rare thing, not common at all. That said, now everybody's supposed to call it Edge Delivery Services. But to be honest, in all the internal communication we're having with people, even at Adobe, everybody's still saying EDS. EDS is most people think that ship has sailed. It's EDS, so
Yeah.
that's why that's probably what we're going to say most of the time too, just because we're used to it, and that's what it
And
is.
it's a lot.
Even
It's
though,
a lot less
yeah, who knows?
syllables. It's a lot easier
Yeah,
to
you're
just
right.
say EDS.
I
Really
mean,
funny variant we actually had discussed internally was Edge DS,
Edge
like a game
DS.
console.
yeah,
Does actually sound like a games console.
right.
Love it. I would play on an Edge DS. So, give me the backstory on this project. How did it come about? Why did you start it? Let's get into it.
So we were wondering, well, I wonder, can't we actually work with this new system and figure out and how that can be done in a good way? And turns out it's even better than everything else. Of course, I'm kind of biased here, but using Hyvä is excellent in combination with EDS. We started this specifically with Christian Münch because both of us work quite a lot on MageOS, the open source Magento fork, and well, we talk about a lot of developments in the Magento Commerce and Magento ecosystem while we're doing that. And naturally, we also talked about the presentations that happened at Adobe Summit. So yeah, that's how we. Since Christian is very knowledgeable, much more knowledgeable than I am, in the larger Adobe product suite and service offerings around AEM and Experience Platform and all of that, especially in combination with Adobe Commerce. Well, we decided to do this together, and yeah, that's how it started, right?
Yeah, that's a good idea because we are Adobe Gold Partner and Hyvä Gold Partner, so I can work with both technologies, and yeah, it was fun
That's a winning combo
to
right
build
there.
with Vinai.
Yeah, it was fun.
Nice. I love it. So I think now would be a great time to actually dive into this integration and get into what are the benefits of using Hyvä with EDS.
Okay, so here we have a page, a content page, right? A little bit about the project. It's on the EDS demo Hyvä.io domain. Oh, it's not even sharing that part, but that's okay. Now I've told you where it is.
I'll put it in the show
And
notes as well.
Thank you. Very good. So this is basically a page managed in AEM, and there's also a little bit of technical background there if you're interested. But also there's an Adobe Commerce shop, and you might have noticed it uses very similar styling. And this is a sample data set that is created by by valantic. And they kind of integrate pretty seamlessly. What's maybe interesting is that the header up here and the footer, they're shared between both sides here. So this Adobe Commerce instance, it's running on Adobe Commerce Cloud, uses the same header and footer. If we add products to the cart like this nice aeroplane here, right? And maybe, oh, this one looks nice too. Yeah, I want one of those too.
You're
right?
really splashing the cash now, Vinai.
That's
really
Hyvä for you. So we can see, this is just a regular Hyvä theme on Adobe Commerce. But if we go back to the Adobe Commerce side, oh, look at this. We can see it's everything's still in here. We can go back. We can configure the instance further, update the item. Everything updates accordingly.
So as a user, you'd never know that you were switching between Edge and Adobe Commerce. It would have just looked like one store.
Everything's interactive. We can move items there, etc. So yeah, that's the whole idea, right? That both parts can integrate. We can take parts out of Commerce, show them on EDS pages. We can take EDH content blocks and show them inside of Adobe Commerce in whatever way makes sense. In this example, we're just using the main menu and the footer of the page, but of course the same could be done for maybe additional product description for some of the products or all of the products. That's then managed in AEM or anything that's required for a given store. It integrates very nicely, also with, of course, very good Core Web Vitals, etc. Not only for the pure EDS AEM content pages, but also for the commerce pages. Yeah. That's basically the main idea, what it is, right? So how is this you built? Maybe, probably, right, would be a place of needs. And I want to pass over to Christian to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I can give an insight. I prepared a diagram, so let's share it. That's an overview. It's of the architecture, but it's only a simplified version because I omitted some components in the background, so it's not too overcomplicated here for the audience. And what you see here is so you have an end user, and the end user is using maybe a browser on the desktop or on a mobile phone, and then we have in front a CDN solution. So it does not matter which one, but it's a CDN solution, and in the CDN there are some traffic rules to route the content. Vinai, you want to?
Yeah, in our case we're using Fastly, just saying, right? So
yeah, it's Fastly here, but we can replace Fastly with other solutions as well. So in our tech demo we choose Fastly because it's very well known in the Magento world. And then we added some rules in the, I call it front CDN, this front CDN, and these rules decide how the content is routed. So, for example, you enter the page, so the home page, and then we have a rule which routes to the left side here, to the CDN here on the Adobe side, which contains all the content of Edge Delivery Services. And we have a rule with which handles or which is using the path of your URL, and if the path starts with /shop, then we route to the Adobe Commerce system on the right side here, containing the Hyvä theme and our integration module. The purpose of the integration module is to load the content from the CDN on the Adobe side to embed the content on the Hyvä in the Hyvä frontend. So that's the screen lines. The screen part here. It's routing over the CDN in the front. It's also technically possible to route directly to the hlx.live page, but we use the CDN in front for that, so that we are in full control of the way the data is loaded.
Yeah.
And on the
Oh, please.
in this part, I want to say this part is what Adobe calls this document-based publishing.
Most people who looked at the Adobe presentations will be familiar with it. Okay, so here we can see Google Drive with a couple of little documents, and each of these documents then represents some content that's part of the site. So this is a very boilerplate situation here. Most of this started out as a copy of what Adobe provides in their starter content template for their boilerplate AEM site, right? So just as a quick example, here's the navigation.
That was one thing I was going to ask actually, is the navigation managed in EDS or Commerce?
Yes, that's right.
So
It's exactly this document here, right? So if you type in it, that's the navigation. Then we have the footer. That's the content for the footer here. And then the actual content for the index page is here. Right, so it's pretty straightforward. And then we can publish this. There's this little Adobe plugin called Sidekick, I think, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
So
that's
if we make a
correct.
change, we can click preview, and it will then do a lot of magic in the background and now deploy it to a domain which ends, it's based on a Git repository name. So this is the branch name, main, then the repository name, in this case here it's content, and the project, Hyvä EDS demo is the project name, and then the actual Apex domain is hlx.page, which is the preview, what Adobe uses to preview this content. And then if you click publish, it does the whole thing and deploys it again in the background to a site which ends same domain, just .live. And that's where we then extract the actual content. And when we started this project, Christian found a very nice way of, figuring out how does this whole thing work. And let's just show you one example. So if we have this nav document here, by the way, this is Google Drive, obviously, but the same thing also works with SharePoint and Microsoft Word and Excel. So if we go to the nav dot just HTML, I guess. Oops, no, that didn't work. So just nav. I want to first nav. Nav it shows the content of the document as a whole page, right? So that's the main thing. And now if we say nav.plain.html, we see just that snippet of that document. So if we look at the source code, we can see it's just this little snippet of HTML. And Christian found out you can also use Markdown. It's pretty clever. So some conversion is happening there in the background between different formats. So that was pretty cool. But of course, this makes it super easy to take parts of the page and embed it into other systems, like we have done, for example, Adobe Commerce, right? So that was kind of fun. And that's the main idea how this document-based authoring works. To create a new page, all you do is you create a new page in this folder structure, and the URL matches the document name with the folders you create in front of it.
Nice.
Yeah, I think that's that side of it. There's a Git repository that is cloned from the AM boilerplate project. Looks something like this. So there are different folders in here. I won't go into too many details, but the idea is once you clone this project, you own it. You can customize it in whatever way is needed for the given project. So that's what we did. The content types or so on, they're called blocks, and each one is implemented as a little JavaScript thing.
Vinai, maybe you
with
should
a-
also show in the Google Doc the blocks there as well, so you can see
that
the
makes
relation
sense.
between the two.
Yeah, thank you. Very good.
Yeah, that was going to be my
So-
question, to be fair. I was wondering how you know what you're supposed to make the content in the document look like for it to interpret it correctly onto the page.
Right. So here we have, for example, cards. These are like tables and columns and metadata. And that then matches the blocks like cards and columns and so on. We created our own mini card and messages blocks to be injected into the page to to work with content coming from Adobe Commerce. And the other counterpart there that actually binds everything together is here in this scripts.js, which is then initially loaded into the page, and all the rest then happens based on that. So yeah, that's the rough idea, right? So basically, this page with the scripts are loaded, and then they can do whatever you need it to do. And then there is another page, which is the Adobe part, the Adobe Commerce part of it, right? So we have these two projects. We have Adobe Commerce and we have the AEM, and we need to work with both independently, and then they're stitched together through the routing on the domain. Anything you want to add, Christian, at this point?
No, that's okay.
Okay.
So you mentioned everything, but maybe it's new for the people to see that, but it's a really simple approach which works very well. So you add some tables in your document, and then Adobe creates a very lightweight, small, without any clutter HTML structure in the background, and that helps us to render it in whatever you need.
On, because now this naturally leads into, okay, so now we have these content blocks, but we want to use them in different systems. And because we don't want to build exactly the same thing twice usually, right? It's too much work. So you came up with a pretty good way to unify the approach to styling both sides. Of course, since we're part of Hyvä, everything kind of got the Hyvä look of the default theme. And yeah, I'll just pass to you, and you can talk more if you want to.
Well, I can share my screen if that's needed, Rebecca.
Yeah.
But in very simple terms, EDS. Let's first share my screen. That's probably the best solution. So whoa, let's avoid the extra beat. So for the team at the moment, we have duplicated the header and footer content in both sides, not duplicated, but as Vinai showed, it's a separate document that can be accessed and can be used in the Magento side as well. So Christian and Vinai have built a little bit of logic and a module for that makes it possible that this is getting that same content that you saw in the Google Doc and showing it in the Magento side of things. Now, to bridge the styling and the JavaScript in both Magento and in EDS, we made styling specifically for that, which is Tailwind CSS, and let me show that for a second. I have to switch my document for the moment because I'm not in the right document right now. So let me also put some pluses on. To give a context, the JavaScript, for example, for the header, not by going too much in technical terms, is handled here. And this same function is also used in Hyvä because it's just vanilla JavaScript and there's no require.js or stuff like that involved. And it can really bridge easy between the two versions. So if you want to change something, you can change it here and you can change it in your Hyvä team. Sadly, you have to change them in both sides, but this way you can at least have the same thing on two sides. And
it's the same code, right?
Yeah, the same code.
Yeah.
And the same can be said for the CSS. So it's Tailwind and CSS. So it's the syntax you're used to in Hyvä. But we need to put it in CSS to make it a little bit easier to bridge the gap between the two. So it's not in the HTML itself because we don't control that. That's coming from Google Docs. And that is actually
EDS.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No problem. So that's in short how the styling is handled. Besides that, it's pretty much everything you are used to in Hyvä. So if we look here, we have the buttons. The buttons are the same in Hyvä with the exception for the selector, and that's it. So this is everything you are used to in Hyvä. And Tailwind config, same story. So in EDS and Magento, you can use the same logic. We even try to keep that as much as possible inside of the JavaScript part of the story. So if you go through this code, and I actually get the right areas, you will see that we are constantly adding classes from Tailwind here. And our Tailwind compiler in the EDS side of things will also scan these files like it is PHTML. So the only big difference here is you're working with JavaScript, not with PHTML, but it does the same thing, sort of.
Thank you. That's right. Just quick note that this kind of working with JavaScript, that's just the way the EDS front end is built. So everything's a little,
And Sean,
JavaScript, let's call it
Yeah.
Well, how difficult was it to include the CSS and the JavaScript from your side?
Actually, it was pretty easy. Vinai did already created the first steps for the Tailwind compiler. We discussed putting it the same way that EDS does it. So by adding a style sheet inside of the block. This created a lot of extra CSS files that are being loaded, and we wanted to keep the CSS as small as possible, that core Hyvä concept. So we put everything in Tailwind. So all the styling is handled here, and the purging is also handled in the same way. So if it does not find opacity 0 in any of the JavaScript files, it will not be in the output of your CSS. So it's pretty easy. The only difference is we're working with JavaScript, not with PHTML.
That's a good point. I would like to add on to that. Hyvä, as everybody who knows it is familiar with, it uses Alpine.js as the only JavaScript library on the front end. All the DOM components are built with it. Natively, AEM EDS doesn't use any JavaScript library except it's all vanilla JavaScript. It would be possible to include even more parts or output from Magento, Adobe Commerce onto the EDS side, of course, but to keep this compatibility between the code, so the code stays the same, that would it would be a good idea to also load Alpine into the EDS side, which would be very possible since everything else there is vanilla JavaScript. So far, we didn't do that. We just built what we needed, which was simple enough with vanilla JavaScript. But if that was the case, then of course the content compatibility would be maximized. Anything that works on the Hyvä side would just work on the EDS side because, well, it's the same stack, Tailwind and Alpine, right? So no, wouldn't be a problem, yeah.
But vanilla is also a great solution on this. The only thing that's unique on EDS to also mention is this decorate part. This is the actual logic that renders that block with the specific things you give it. So inside of here, we add all the extra things based on the content to render the block as we want to render. In this case, the header. And we also try to make the menu a much smarter component. So this is also very specific to our case, where we made the menu and in such a way that it has multiple layers. This is not something we have in Hyvä by default, but it works here. And to move over, you see that the menu is exactly the same because the JavaScript and the styling that handles all that rendering is handled on both sides using similar code.
Excellent.
Shall I give it back to you? So we could probably, as I already showed, talk about the speed because it's really fast, as you can see.
Yeah, it does seem to when you're clicking through, you can almost hardly tell that it's switching between. Yeah, you have to do a double take to make sure the page has changed. But yeah, I'm guessing that is one of the main benefits of Hyvä combined with EDS.
EDS is built to be fast. That was one of its design goals, and it certainly reaches it for at least the content as provided out of AEM. And that's why it's such a natural fit to combine it with Hyvä, which also was built explicitly with performance in mind as a Adobe Commerce front end, which it does very well. Yeah. So I'm a bit hesitant to run any Core Web Vitals or Lighthouse now. You can run them yourself on EDS demo Hyvä.io, simply because when recording something and streaming something, it's always not the same, right? So you test yourself, please. Gather your own data, and you'll see.
Yeah,
it works
the
very
last
well.
test I ran was 97, so that's really good on Lighthouse score for speed. And the rest, of course, with the SEO and accessibility were just 100.
Well, SEO, because it has the meta tag exclude, is not 100% because we don't want it to
No?
be indexed. No,
Oh, yeah,
but that's only because we're excluding it from search engine, right?
But still, it should be 100% if you implement it. Probably we could push speed up a little bit, but that's the disadvantage of rendering stuff with JavaScript. So hitting the 100 is not very plausible, but it should not be the goal. The performance is already good, and the feel of the performance, as we showed, is great. We could even add speculation rules to it if it's more performance.
Actually,
stuff
already
like
there.
They're already there.
Yeah,
it's even better.
I just wanted to add briefly about what you just mentioned there, the JavaScript side rendering of the content. I believe that in many regards, server-side rendering is superior, still, definitely, and that makes it possible to be a lot quicker. It is possible to kind of trick your way around Lighthouse scores by reserving space and then requesting data from API endpoints or GraphQL or wherever, and then if you know exactly how much content is being provided, inject it into the page, and Lighthouse will be happy enough. But it doesn't compare to the actual user experience of just having a fully rendered site visible immediately without having to wait for any additional JavaScript execution and fetch calls that happen in the background. So that's why I believe the experience for the visitors using a Hyvä-themed commerce site in combination with EDS is far superior to any other more, I don't want to call any names now. I don't want to talk bad about others, but I think Hyvä is better. Insert whatever you want there. It's definitely faster and better user experience can be built.
Do you agree, Christian? Because you're an outsider from Hyvä.
Yeah, the first term I had in mind was PWA. I don't know if you want to mention PWA, but I personally like this. I personally don't like if there are some loading after you visited the page. So you have some delays in the loading. So that's why I'm not, but I'm very conservative here. So, I also like the approach to have a full rendered page, but there are some good, there are some good parts where you want to load your data maybe in a lazy loading way. So the good thing is in our solution here, you have the full flexibility as merchant, so you can mix. So no one talks about that, but it's possible to mix. So you can have drop-ins. Adobe calls it drop-ins, this small JavaScript parts, some components, which loads data from maybe an external service. This is, by the way, also set up here in our demo. So all the Adobe services are in the background running.
So product recommendations, live search, what you mean, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Also catalog service. So you can use that as merchant, and you can decide if you want to use it or not. So if you think it's too complex to implement all the logic in a JavaScript component, then you can use the Hyvä based theme logic, and so it's the best of both technologies.
You just mentioned these drop-ins, so those little JavaScript blocks basically you put into the EDS site, similar to the ones we have shown there. And Adobe does provide commerce drop-ins, which are used as like the Adobe Commerce front-end parts. So you can have EDS with Adobe Commerce data in them or functionality. They use a different approach than we do, though. It's much more like taking part of a PWA application and just rendering that, so it's all the data is fetched through GraphQL and so on. One of the problems with that is that it doesn't provide all the features of Adobe Commerce or B2B yet. It's just very basic functionality that's available through these commerce drop-ins, and everything else has to be developed as custom development, which of course takes a lot of time to develop until it's ready. Even the standard Magento open source features aren't completely covered, not even on an API level, actually. So yeah, there's a lot that can be done using an approach like we do that is not yet possible without custom development, which of course makes the whole project more cost effective and faster time to market wise. Yeah, I just wanted to mention this feature coverage, which is actually Hyvä has the full feature coverage for B2B and Adobe Commerce, and of course also the open source version. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
does
'cause I
that
didn't
mean,
know this.
Vinai, to bridge that a little point, how is it with extensions? Are there extensions, or is it all
of course.
custom work?
You know the answer, Sean.
I know, but still.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, it's of course there are no extensions for commerce drop-ins. Everything has to be customized if needed by.
Some smaller parts are available, so you can have a basic product detail page on a card, but and a category page with some filters, but it's not what we know from Magento side. So you have thousands of options you can configure on the Magento side, and that's currently not covered. But it depends if you need that features or not.
Of course.
So it does not mean that it's useless. So if you have, for example, a B2C shop, then you can maybe use that. But in my company, we have a lot of B2B shops. So and the B2B coverage is on the roadmap. And that's also one of the ideas that you can now use Edge Delivery Services in combination with Hyvä, and don't have to wait 1 or 2 years to get the full coverage on the B2B side.
Right, and that's regarding the feature coverage. But I think what you mentioned was the extension support. So with Adobe Commerce, we have hundreds of extension vendors. Many of them have hundreds of extensions that are Hyvä compatible and can be installed and used and customized. And none of this whole ecosystem and infrastructure exists for commerce drop-ins or such, right? Everything has to be developed custom for a given project, which of course is possible, but that of course highly depends on the project and available time, etc. So there are benefits and drawbacks to both approaches, I guess.
And it's different technologies. So the Magento modules are mostly PHP based, and drop-ins are then NPM packages, which can be installed, but different technology.
Different technology. So for any company who is familiar with Adobe Commerce, using the approach of running the commerce side on Hyvä would be reusing the existing knowledge. Basically, all the existing Magento and Hyvä knowledge still applies. While when switching to something else, then, well, the learning curve probably is a bit higher because it's something new, right? Which is fun, but also takes a bit of time. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's strong benefits around this for time to market, cost, and just general ease for existing Magento development agencies and developers. So yeah, I think we've covered so much in just such a small amount of time, it's felt like. But yeah, I think keeping along these lines, how have you found the project for yourselves internally? Like if this was a client project, how do you feel like it would have gone?
Yeah, first it was really fun to work together with Vinai and Sean on this project. So the first idea was to create a tech demo, but it worked so well that we decided it could be a solution for everyone. So it's and for me especially, if I worked a lot of hours investigated the Edge Delivery Services, then I thought it's really handy solution now, and very pragmatic solution to combine both worlds into one world. So it's what was really fun to see that we can solve this problem for merchants in such an easy way.
It's best of both
Yeah, it
worlds.
was fun. I agree. So I knew next to nothing starting out, so it was super instructive to learn from Christian, and he could tell me all about how the whole document-based authoring works and what's the internal structure here and there, and the GitHub repos, and point me to the right documentation and everything. So that was very interesting, and I greatly enjoyed working with you there. And yeah, it's super cool how it turned out. Didn't take that much time at all.
I agree. It was a really fun experience. I'm also surprised that we do this through Google Docs, which sounds weird at first. You probably would have think to use Markdown or something else similar to a JavaScript framework, but this was really fun. I also enjoyed working with you guys. The most fun that I also had was actually it was pretty easy to build, the styling wise and the blocks, and I was surprised that the documentation on how to build blocks was pretty clear actually, which is from Adobe's perspective something that I was surprised with. So I was happy to see that that was easier.
So if you want to learn more there's this aem.live domain, and if you click on create your first site, this is a great start to the tutorial there. So just wanted to say that. Oh wait, I'm not sharing the full screen, so you can't see the domain. So it's aem.live.
I
Let's
love
put
it.
it in the
That
show
was going to
notes.
be my
Thanks.
question. To be fair, I was going to say, yeah, if you can send me all of this documentation that you've been talking about, it would be great to include that in the show notes for everyone watching. So yeah, make sure you look below, and we'll link to everything useful that the guys have mentioned that has turned them into these EDS magicians. So you can become one too. But no, that's amazing. I mean, obviously, what do you see the next steps for EDS being? Like, what future enhancements have you got in mind, or how do you see it being used?
Well, the tech demo's done. I think we'll just leave it as is for now. But anytime somebody is interested in implementing this in a project, we're happy to share all the code and any knowledge we gain during this little research project. And we're really curious to see what people build with it. And if you want to learn more otherwise, please feel free to reach out to Christian or us. And yeah, I'm happy to chat about it. Right? Anything you would like to add, Christian?
You said everything perfectly. So this was maybe I can add as addition that there are already a lot of sites in the live sites available with Edge Delivery Services. For example, Adobe uses their Edge Delivery Service for their own pages, and that's a good sign. So the technology is not only a marketing solution; it's a good sign for me that if the creator used the same technology for their own solutions, and that's why I think it's good to use them if you are Adobe customer.
Yeah, definitely. It
Right.
shows that they are going to keep it up to date and keep enhancing and bringing new features if they're using it themselves. Because they have internal pressure as well as external pressure.
I guess it also shows that this whole idea of document-based authoring also works for large companies and large sites, which doesn't seem intuitive to me at first, at least. So yeah, but it does.
No,
So,
but it is.
for example, the business.adobe.com site is also made with Edge Delivery Services, and it's using SharePoint in the background. And interestingly, all the stuff is in GitHub, so you can see the background technology of the business side of Adobe in GitHub. That's just super awesome because it's yeah, nothing I expected to see that Adobe shares the internal logic in GitHub.
Fully open source, so nothing
It's
It's
beside.
really open, yeah.
Just a quick note, because you don't have to make your GitHub repositories public unless you want to, right? It also works with private repositories.
Yeah, right. And that's why it's awesome to see that Adobe opens
Yeah.
their own logic for every developer. So you can sneak into the code.
That's interesting to
Nice.
see. I agree.
Yeah, that's really cool. I'll have to grab the link off you for that as well, Christian, and we'll share that in the show notes and take a look through. Well, for our viewers, I hope you really enjoyed this. If you've got any questions or if there's anything that you want a little bit more detail on, feel free to post a comment below and we'll get back to you. Or like I say, I will also include the social profiles for everyone on this call so that you can reach out to them if you'd like to ask them a question directly. But yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe and share this video with anyone that you think would be interested. We really appreciate you being here. Thank you for watching and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Thanks, Rebecca.
Thank you,
Bye.
too.
Bye.